Hello, today we're diving into a strange case that took place early in the morning on the 16th of December, 2005, 20 years ago in Dingbian County, Shaanxi Province, China. The county police received a report from a woman named Wan Hong, who said that her house had been broken into. According to Wan Hong, 2 days earlier she had been away on a business trip. When she returned home, she noticed something unusual and discovered that her camera, a gold necklace, and about 700 yuan in cash, roughly $100 were missing. After examining the scene, investigators realized this break-in was different from the usual thefts they had seen. One investigator said that from the very moment he stepped into the apartment, he sensed something was off. Unlike typical burglaries, where rooms are turned upside down and things are scattered everywhere, this home was neat and orderly. Only a few items were missing. Besides this unusual tidiness, another suspicious detail was the way the intruder had entered. The front door of Wan Hong's home was still locked. Her apartment was on the second floor of the building, making it difficult to climb from the outside, and the windows showed no signs of being forced open. So, how had the thief gotten in? At this point, Wan Hong mentioned someone. She explained that she hadn't been able to contact this person for several days. Their phone was always switched off. That person was Qiao Li, her distant niece, who often called her aunt. Qiao Li worked for a telecommunications company in Dingbian. Since her divorce, Wan Hong had been living alone. About 2 weeks before the incident, Qiao Li, who had no place to stay at the time, moved in with her. 2 days before Wan Hong left on her trip, Qiao Li was still there. But after the break-in, Qiao Li disappeared as well. According to her co-workers, 2 days earlier, on the very day that Wan Hong left on a business trip, Qiao Li had gone to work as usual. But the following day, she never showed up at the company. When her colleagues tried to call her, her phone was always switched off. By the time Wan Hong reported the incident, Qiao Li had already been absent from work for 3 days. Could it be that Qiao Li was the one who stole belongings from Wan Hong's home and then disappeared? At that time, Qiao Li was 24 years old, unmarried, and originally from Meiji, Shaanxi Province. Years earlier, her parents had moved to the city of Ordos, in Inner Mongolia, where they opened a small hardware shop and settled down with the entire family. Qiao Li's family could not accept that she was being suspected of theft. They described her as a well-behaved young woman, intelligent, once a class leader, with excellent grades, and even a party member. It was known that she had graduated from a finance and commerce school in Shaanxi Province, where she consistently excelled in her studies and demonstrated strong character in every aspect. After graduating in 2003, Qiao Li was recommended for a position at a telecommunications company in Dingbian. Her family insisted she could never do such a thing, and even said they would compensate 10 to 20 times the value of the missing belongings if Qiao Li were truly guilty. Although the family was not wealthy, Qiao Li already had a steady monthly income from her job and was never short of money. Her family also did not face financial hardship. So, what reason would she possibly have to steal, especially from relatives who were helping her? Not only her family, but even the police in Dingbian questioned the idea that Qiao Li was the culprit, as there were simply too many suspicious details at the scene. Inside Qiao Li's bedroom, police discovered her set of keys, including the keys to her room, the gate, and her motorcycle. In her handbag, many of her personal items remained untouched. Most notably, under her pillow, officers found a bank book with more than 5,000 yuan, which is over $700 USD. If Qiao Li truly had stolen and fled, why would she abandon all of her own belongings? And if it wasn't her, then where had she gone? According to her colleagues, Qiao Li had been working in Dingbian for more than a year. She was a rather quiet person and did not have many friends. Her social relationships were quite simple. However, Qiao Li had a habit. Every day after finishing work, she would call her parents. The last time she contacted her parents was around 5:45 p.m. on the day Wan Hong went on a business trip. Qiao Li's father said that after that call, he was no longer able to reach his daughter. During the phone call, he did not notice anything unusual in her behavior. The person closest to Qiao Li in Dingbian was none other than Wan Hong's family. Call records showed that after calling her father, Qiao Li made one more phone call. This was also her last call. The call was made at 6:51 p.m. and it was to Wan Hong's mother. Wan Hong's mother recalled that she heard no voice on the other end of the line, as if the signal was bad. She called Qiao Li back but could not get through. Finally, she called her daughter, Wan Hong, and told her what had happened. Wan Hong then began calling Chu Li repeatedly, but she could not connect. Sensing something unusual, the Dingbian police began investigating the neighbors around Wan Hong's home. The neighbors said they had not noticed anything unusual that day, since Chu Li was only temporarily staying there. The residents of the compound did not know her and paid no attention to her comings and goings. Directly tracing Chu Li's whereabouts brought no results. However, it was clear that searching aimlessly like that was not effective. When no clues could be found outside, they decided to return and interrogate Wan Hong more thoroughly. Mrs. Wan Hong pointed out several irregularities at the scene, which made the police feel that this case was not simply a burglary. She said that in the corner between the living room and the hallway, there was a large cabinet. On top of this cabinet, she had previously placed 2 black suitcases. When reporting the case, Mrs. Wan Hong clearly stated that one of the 2 suitcases, the type with a pull handle, had disappeared. If the thief only wanted to take a few small items, there would be no need to carry away such a large suitcase. Moreover, the suitcase itself had no real value. Another strange detail was in the dining room. On the wall, there was a hanging cupboard. During the crime scene investigation, police found a kitchen knife placed on top of this cupboard. Its original position, however, was near the gas stove in the kitchen. Why would the thief take the suitcase and move the knife? These doubts led the police to believe that this was not a simple theft. To clarify these suspicions, the Dingbian police conducted a second crime scene investigation. This time, they made an important discovery. Between the gaps of the tiled floor, dried bloodstains were found. In addition, blood was also detected on the edge of the toilet bowl in the bathroom. The Dingbian police collected DNA samples from these bloodstains and compared them with the DNA of Qiao Li's parents. The results showed that the blood indeed belonged to Qiao Li. Had something unfortunate happened to Qiao Li at Mrs. Wan Hong's home? Realizing the seriousness of the case, the Dingbian police set up a special task force led by Bureau Chief Su Zhichang. He shared that he had only taken office in Dingbian on the 1st of October 2005 and was still in the process of familiarizing himself with the local situation. The occurrence of this case placed him under tremendous pressure. The discovery of Qiao Li's blood in the bathroom suggested that she might have been harmed. However, how she was harmed, whether she was still alive or already dead, remained unproven due to a lack of further evidence. To find answers, the task force carried out a third crime scene investigation. This examination suggested that, besides Qiao Li, another person had also been at the scene. From security camera footage, an image showed a man climbing the staircase that led to Mrs. Wan Hong's apartment. The task force concluded that this man had been inside the bedroom or dining room before fleeing down the stairs and leaving the scene. The building where the crime occurred was a closed residential compound, surrounded by walls more than 2 meters high, and the main gate was usually locked around 11 p.m. Why then was there a chair placed at the stairway exit? The task force analyzed that it was very likely someone had used the chair to climb over the wall and escape during the night. And this person was certainly not Qiao Li. She had already gone missing. The windows of Mrs. Wan Hong's apartment were still shut and could only be opened from the inside. This indicated that the intruder was likely someone familiar with the place. The gatekeeper reported that between 2 and 3 a.m., on the day Qiao Li disappeared, a man in his early 20s, about 5 feet 7 inches tall, speaking in a Xi'an accent, requested to be let out of the compound. This man claimed to be a resident there, but later, the gatekeeper recalled never having seen him before. The task force considered this man highly suspicious. After investigating, Qiao Li's fiancé became the first person police scrutinized. The couple had been engaged on the 8th of February 2005 in their hometown of Meizi and were planning to marry by the end of the year. Her fiancé was from Baoji City, Shaanxi Province. Since Baoji is close to Xi'an, his accent was quite similar to that of Xi'an natives. Qiao Li's fiancé was a young man in his early 20s, tall and thin. His age, accent, and height matched the description of the man who had requested to leave in the early hours. The task force focused their investigation on him, but eventually cleared him from suspicion, as he had no opportunity to commit the crime. During that period, he had a solid alibi confirming he was in Baoji at the time of the incident. According to Mrs. Wan Hong, at around 7 p.m. on the evening before she left for her business trip, she and Qiao Li were at home when a man came knocking on the door. Mrs. Wan Hong recognized this man. After her divorce, she had dated a boyfriend who lived in Yinchuan, the capital of the Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region, more than 62.14 miles away from Dingbian. The man who came knocking was a neighbor of her boyfriend, known by the nickname Xiao Dongbei. Xiao Dongbei said he came to Dingbian to meet some online friends, but he had lost his money and couldn't afford to return home. He asked Wan Hong to lend him 20 yuan, about $3. Although surprised by his sudden appearance, since he was a neighbor of her boyfriend, Wan Hong didn't think much of it and lent him the money. However, Xiao Dongbei didn't leave right away. Instead, he pulled Wan Hong into the bedroom to talk. When Qiao Li noticed that she and this unfamiliar man had been talking for too long, she felt uneasy and tried to pull her out of the room. Seeing this, Xiao Dongbei stood up on his own and decided to leave. The special investigation team found Xiao Dongbei's appearance suspicious and traveled to Yinchuan to investigate. Once there, they discovered that Xiao Dongbei had already left his rental and disappeared without a trace. Neighbors in the same lodging said that he had no steady job and usually did nothing all day. They didn't know where he came from, what his real name was, only that his nickname was Xiao Dongbei. One neighbor mentioned that Xiao Dongbei had mysteriously rented a place there, and after the case, he suddenly vanished. This raised serious suspicion. Although he was the prime suspect, the police had no real name, no permanent address, and no stable work record to trace. They searched through various channels but still found nothing about him. At this point, the trail went cold. By this time, Qiao Li had been missing for more than 6 months. For her family, her sudden disappearance was a devastating blow. Qiao Li had been the pride of her family. She worked hard in her studies, got accepted into a vocational school, and later found employment at a telecommunications company in the city. Over the past 6 months, Qiao Li's family had spent a large amount of money searching for her, but with no results. They placed great hope in the Dingbian police, but the investigation showed no breakthroughs. Director Tuesday Ji-Chang felt enormous pressure. He admitted that having a young woman vanish without a trace weighed heavily on him. The case had reached a deadlock. Determined to push forward, he reinforced the task force by assigning Xia Huiling and several other investigators to join. As the case entered its 3rd year, the task force had already examined every possible lead. The only one left unresolved was Xiao Dongbei. Through investigation, they discovered that he once had a girlfriend named Bingbing, who was from Longde County in the Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region. After a long search, the task force finally located Bingbing. At first, she was resistant to cooperating with the police, but after repeated persuasion, she eventually revealed that Xiao Dongbei's real name was Quan Wei, born on the 28th of September 1975, from Jiahe District, Luoyang City, Henan Province. Once they confirmed his identity, Bingbing also described the breakup between her and Quan Wei. Certain details she shared only deepened the investigators' suspicions about him. Bingbing recalled that around the 10th of December 2005, just 4 days before Qiao Li went missing, she and Quan Wei had an argument. Afterward, he left, taking all his belongings with him. 6 days later, on the 16th of December 2005, 3 days after Qiao Li disappeared, Quan Wei suddenly returned. He hurriedly told Bingbing not to tell anyone where he had been if asked. Then he quickly packed his things again and left. Bingbing remembered that he gave her only a brief hug before rushing out the door. From that day on, she never saw him again. In short, Quan Wei had left before Qiao Li disappeared, briefly returned, and then vanished completely while warning Bingbing not to reveal his whereabouts. This raised strong suspicion against him. The task force believed that once they captured Xiao Dongbei, also known as Quan Wei, the case would finally be solved. With the cooperation of the Henan police, the whereabouts of Xiao Dongbei were quickly traced. According to criminal judgment number 1619 of the Laocheng District People's Court in Luoyang, in 2006, the defendant Quan Wei, male, born the 28th of September 1975, was sentenced to 8 years in prison for rape. The judgment showed that Quan Wei had been arrested by Luoyang police in August 2005 for rape and was sentenced in October 2005. Meanwhile, Qiao Li disappeared on the 14th of December 2005. This means that at the time of her disappearance, Quan Wei had already been in custody for over 4 months. The police visited the prison to verify whether Quan Wei had left the facility between July 2005 and the 2008 investigation. The verification confirmed that Quan Wei had never left prison, had not been released on bail for medical treatment, nor granted parole. Luoyang, in Henan Province, is thousands of miles away from Dingbian County in Shaanxi Province. How could someone in custody commit a crime so far away? Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei, had neither the time nor the opportunity to commit the crime. However, Xia Huailing and the other investigators raised a question. If Quan Wei was serving time in prison, then who was the person Bing Bing had known? Was Bing Bing lying? To clarify this, the task force took a photo of Quan Wei in prison and showed it to Bing Bing. She still insisted that the person in the photo was Xiao Dongbei, also known as Quan Wei. Not only Bing Bing, but also Wan Hong and her boyfriend confirmed that the person in the photo was Xiao Dongbei. This left Xia Huiling and the investigators completely perplexed. They didn't understand what was happening. The case had hit another dead end. Qiao Li's family continued the search, suspecting that she might have been kidnapped. After the case stalled, Xia Huiling and the investigators returned to Luoyang, Henan, to look for clues. They went to Quan Wei's parents' home. Quan Wei's parents were retired factory workers from Luoyang, originally from northeast China. That's why Quan Wei spoke with a northeastern accent, earning the nickname Xiao Dongbei. However, neighbors said that Quan Wei and his family had moved away years ago and had sold the house. The neighbors didn't know where they had gone and had no contact information. Although unaware of Quan Wei's whereabouts, the neighbors provided a crucial clue. Quan Wei had a twin brother named Quan Chao. The two brothers not only looked alike but were almost identical in height and weight, making it very difficult for outsiders to distinguish them. Here was a photo from the household register of Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei, and here was a photo from Quan Chao's register. Though their hairstyles differed, the facial features were strikingly similar. The fact that Quan Wei had an identical twin brother led Xia Huiling and the investigators to a bold hypothesis. Was the person in prison really Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei, or was it his brother Quan Chao? To differentiate the brothers, the task force discovered that Quan Chao's left pinky finger was missing. This was due to Quan Chao's addiction to online gaming. In a fit of anger while disciplining him, Quan Chao's father had cut off his left pinky with a knife. The task force reported this suspicion to the Henan judicial authorities. After investigation, the authorities found that the person serving time under the name Quan Wei had the left pinky missing 2 phalanges. The fingerprints confirmed the absence of the left pinky print. From this, the task force concluded that the person in Henan province prison was not Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei, but his brother Quan Chao. Quan Chao had used his older brother's identity to serve the sentence. The task force speculated that Quan Chao might have feared that his prior criminal record would lead to a harsher sentence, so he used his brother's name to avoid increased punishment. They learned that in 1995, Quan Chao had been sentenced to 5 years for theft, completing his term in 2000. By law, a second offense within 5 years after release is considered a repeat offense and punished more severely. Quan Chao was arrested in August 2005 for rape, which was less than 5 years after his release. The investigators concluded that Quan Chao impersonated his brother to serve the sentence and evade stricter punishment. The case took an unexpected turn when they discovered that the prisoner was the younger brother, not the older. So where was Quan Wei? No one in Luoyang knew his whereabouts. The task force considered that Quan Wei's parents were from Heilongjiang and wondered if he had returned to the northeast with them. Therefore, they traveled to Heilongjiang and finally traced Quan Wei's whereabouts. However, this time, he appeared under the name Quan Chao. According to criminal judgment number 524 of the Taierdu District People's Court in Daqing, in 2007, the defendant Quan Chao, male, born the 28th of September 1975, was sentenced to 10 years in prison and fined 5,000 yuan for theft. The task force confirmed that the Quan Chao in this judgment was actually Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei, whom they had been seeking. Investigators analyzed that Quan Wei may have had to use his brother's name because his own identity had already been taken by Quan Chao in 2005. Since Qiao Li went missing on the 14th of December 2005, the task force spent 4 years, traveling from Henan to the northeast, to finally identify the prime suspect, Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei. However, the task force hesitated to apprehend him. Ha Huiling explained that the case was extremely complicated, had taken place long ago, and they had no direct evidence against Quan Wei, only a few minor pieces of indirect evidence. Although they had collected the knife from the crime scene and traces of the victim's blood, these could not be directly linked to Quan Wei. Even though Xiao Dongbei had been at the scene before the crime and had time to commit it, the evidence only suggested the possibility of his involvement, not enough to convict him. The task force had no direct proof that Quan Wei was the perpetrator. Hastily confronting him could place them at a disadvantage. If Quan Wei refused to admit his actions, there would be no other way to proceed. Moreover, an early confrontation could make him suspicious, complicating the investigation later. The task force decided to gather more direct evidence before confronting Quan Wei. However, the crime scene had been meticulously cleaned by the perpetrator. The team examined the scene 3 times but could not find fingerprints, hair, or blood from the suspect. Now, their only hope rested on a knife that had been moved at the scene. Xia Huailing explained that they had sent the knife for forensic analysis at the Dulam City Police Department, hoping for clues. Unfortunately, the knife had also been thoroughly cleaned. The main suspect was right in front of them. But without direct evidence, the truth remained hidden. Once again, the case had reached a dead end. For Qiao Li's family, 5 years had passed, and they still did not know whether their daughter was alive or dead. The pain of losing her constantly tormented them. Qiao Li's father, overwhelmed by grief, often wandered the streets in a daze, bumping into trees or utility poles. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, his daughter's image returned vividly. To accelerate the investigation, the task force added Kui Zhongli, deputy captain of the Dingbian County Criminal Police, to the team. At this point, the task force became known as the Iron Trio, consisting of Gao Jianli, Xia Heiling, and Kui Zhongli. Where would this Iron Trio find their breakthrough? Upon reviewing the entire case file, the shape of bloodstains behind the bathroom door caught their attention. By analyzing how the bloodstains had formed, they could begin to deduce what had happened at the scene. Gao Jianli and his colleagues believed that the bloodstains had been caused by something like a mop touching the corner of the wall. To test this hypothesis, Gao Jianli used a mop dipped in red ink to simulate blood and conducted an experiment. He explained that when the mop was not pressed firmly against the wall, it created small dots forming a line. The experiment showed that the mop stains closely resembled the blood pattern at the crime scene, consisting of small, adjacent dots. There had also been a mop at the crime scene, but it had been washed clean. From this detail, the task force inferred that there had been a large amount of blood at the scene, which the perpetrator had wiped away with the mop. So how had such a large volume of blood accumulated? The task force noticed a knife on top of the living room cabinet. Originally a new knife, its blade now had a distinctive crescent-shaped nick. Experts determined that this nick was caused by the blade striking a hard object, likely bone. The crescent shape suggested that the hard object the knife struck was also curved. So there was a large amount of blood at the scene and a knife with a crescent-shaped nick. Were these two details connected? Considering that a suitcase at the scene had gone missing, the task force hypothesized that Qiao Li had been killed, her body dismembered, and placed in the suitcase by the perpetrator. The crime scene was gradually being reconstructed. So who was the perpetrator? Why commit such a brutal act? Previously, the task force had identified Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei, as the prime suspect, but lacked direct evidence. The truth remained hidden. Gao Jianli explained that the perpetrator had carefully cleaned the scene. Not only were the floors, living room, and hallway wiped clean, but the bathroom was also meticulously cleaned. The difficulty for Gao Jianli and his colleagues was not only that the scene had been sanitized, but also that the house had changed hands multiple times. Wan Hong had sold it years ago, so the original scene was gone. The team could only rely on the remaining clues, ultimately focusing on the knife with the crescent-shaped nick. Gao Jianli said that although the knife had been cleaned by the murderer, the forensic technology was getting more and more advanced. They hoped to find some clues. In September 2011, the expert team sent the knife to the Shaanxi Provincial Police Department's Forensic Center. The results clearly identified human cells on the knife handle. After comparison, the results showed that the tissue cells on the knife handle had a 99.9% authentication rate that belonged to Quan Wei. Finally, the task force obtained direct evidence to charge Quan Wei. In December 2011, they notified authorities in Heilongjiang province that Quan Wei was involved in the murder case and had impersonated his younger twin brother, Quan Chao, to serve a prison sentence. They also requested to transfer Quan Wei from Wudaliangqi Prison, Heilongjiang, to Dingbian County, Shaanxi Province. For questioning, the task force's request was quickly approved. After a long journey, Quan Wei was escorted to Dingbian that evening. The interrogation began late at night. As the task force anticipated, Quan Wei stubbornly refused to confess. Even after the investigators clarified the name switch between him and his brother, he still did not admit he was Xiao Dongbei, aka Quan Wei. He insisted his name was Quan Chao and refused to provide any family information. However, what Quan Wei did not anticipate was that the police had direct evidence from the knife. After over an hour of mental struggle, he was forced to confess to robbery and murder. He admitted that on the 13th of December 2005, a day before the crime, he went to Wan Hong's house and borrowed 20 yuan, which he quickly spent. The next evening, he returned to Wan Hong to borrow more money. Quan Wei said he only exchanged a few words with Qiao Li, then, for unknown reasons, strangled her to death. He did not explain why he acted so brutally. After killing Qiao Li, he used a kitchen knife to dismember her body, placed it into a suitcase at the scene, and meticulously cleaned the area. He worked until 2 to 3 a.m. Before leaving, he took all valuables in the house. Initially, Quan Wei planned to use a chair at Wan Hong's house to climb the wall, but the wall was too high, and carrying the suitcase with the body made it impossible. Reluctantly, he called the gatekeeper to open the door. The gatekeeper, a middle-aged woman, was not highly alert, allowing Quan Wei to easily remove Qiao Li's body. Quan Wei admitted that he had dumped the body into an abandoned well in the outskirts. After searching, the task force located this well, now a charcoal pit. They found Qiao Li's body at the bottom. The hair clip she wore at the time of her murder was still intact. After 6 years, the truth was finally revealed. During the investigation, the task force discovered that Quan Wei had not only killed Qiao Li, but was also involved in multiple other robberies and murders. The team continues to expand the investigation. If these allegations are confirmed, Quan Wei will face harsher penalties. For Qiao Li's family, the pain has not eased. Her mother still cannot accept that her daughter was murdered and continues to hope that she is alive. The case concluded with Quan Wei sentenced to death, but its echoes remain, leaving much for us to reflect upon. Qiao Li, a young girl with a bright future, became a victim of a senseless crime. Her story serves as a warning to all of us about the need to stay vigilant and protect ourselves, especially when living alone or interacting with strangers. Quan Wei, a cold-blooded murderer, took Qiao Li's life for a small amount of money. He embodied moral corruption, a disregard for law and human life. His actions caused immense suffering to the victim's family and spread fear in society. This case also highlights the dangers posed by repeat offenders, reintegrating into society without proper rehabilitation. Quan Wei's exploitation of his resemblance to his twin brother to evade the law is a notable example of the cunning and sophistication of criminals. The case is closed, but the lessons about vigilance, placing trust wisely, and persistence in the fight against evil remain. This story serves as a reminder to protect ourselves, safeguard our loved ones, and never lose faith in justice. Today's video ends here. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.